Merry Christmas and welcome everyone to Mondays with Michael. Thanks for joining us today. A Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to everyone. Hope you have or are having a wonderful holiday season with loved ones. And this is, we are, well, it's good to be together. So whatever platform you're on, if you'd like to check in, let us know who you are, where you're calling from. If you're on our Zoom link or our watch page, feel free to put questions in for today. We love to hear from you. And let's jump in. So today we'll have a shorter show today. We're just a few days before Christmas, and so we want to make sure you have maximum time with family and loved ones. But there are a couple of things I'd love to that we're going to talk about today, which I think are amazing, and also want to have a chance to answer your questions and play you some Christmas carols to celebrate the season. And today I'm going to be talking about a few things, and wanted to today, let me just cue this up. There we are. So if you haven't been with us, a warm welcome. If you've been with us a lot over the last 5.5 years, a warm welcome. And this is our weekly time to get together in this format of a live podcast. And thankfully, we're able to stream to about 10 different pages and platforms. So we're reaching more folks with our message of nature first, drugs last, which is our whole message here. And welcome to show number 295 for this December 22nd, coming up on our 300th show in January. And it's been a wonderful journey with all of you. Thank you for being with us over all this time. And as always, if you're on our watch page or if you are in our Zoom link, please feel free to put in any updates, links to things you found interesting, questions you have for today. All of that is welcome, and we'd love to hear from you. So, with that, we've got just a one big update, which is pretty remarkable, and this is on kind of a MAHA update, the ongoing work of Bobby Kennedy and those around him, supported by the MAHA movement, which was begun by MAHA moms over 20 years ago. Some of you may recall or be aware of the story that Bobby's told a number of times. He was an environmental lawyer looking to clean up the Hudson River and many other environmentally challenged areas, dealing with pollution, and in part getting mercury out, industrial waste, mercury out of the waterways. And started to show up at his public lectures to inform people about all this environmental toxicity. And here's I know some of you are familiar with the Bobby mug. This is there's been no time in history when the people censoring free speech were the good guys. Classic Bobby quote, one of many. So he was approached by these very as he would say, put together moms who said, well, you're talking about getting mercury out of the environment, which is great, thank you, and could you please help us get mercury out of childhood vaccines, which is there in many vaccines as a preservative. As we talked about here, recently, the government is now moving to finally get mercury out of all vaccines. I'm not sure what that process is or how long that will take. And they just were persistently showing up at his events. And he was the most successful environmental attorney in history, cleaning up the Hudson River, where I used to live, where I grew up in New York City, and in that area, New York State, Hudson Valley, and then was kind of brought into this movement of dealing with childhood illness caused by the vaccine schedule, which is immense. Easily the greatest cause of childhood illness is the vaccine schedule, and we're going to talk about that today. And as he says, he was kind of dragged into this movement, kicking and screaming, because it wasn't something he was focused on. And then one mom, he basically, politely declined. He's like, I'm working on this environment thing. So a mom showed up at his house and rang the bell and said, put on his, gave him this like massive stack of published research on vaccine safety or lack thereof. And she said, these are, published studies on the problems with mercury and other toxins in vaccines. And he said, I'm not leaving until you look at this stuff. And so he's like, okay, come on in. And he sat there, or she sat and watched him go through, dozens of studies in this massive stack. And he couldn't believe it. He's like, I didn't realize this was an issue of toxicity from the vaccine schedule. But that was the beginning. This is over 20 years ago. And this, has just become the Maha movement in part, where parents whose children were injured by the vaccine schedule. So that's, pretty remarkable. And that's, been leading to, what we're seeing today. So the big update is that the government is considering, and this follows the removal of the hepatitis B vaccine from being recommended on the first day of life, which there was never a reason to do, and delaying it for at least a couple of months, and making that at least delayed. That also, and that happened kind of in the same meeting as a overall review of the entire childhood schedule, and the latest recommendation is going to be, or at least they're considering, eliminating the federal childhood vaccine schedule entirely, and putting that into simply what they're calling shared decision making with the parent and their doctor. And basically, and the president in his campaign talked about this a number of times. He didn't see why it was a good idea to give babies, dozens of vaccines within their first weeks of life. And so this is a while ago now. This is during the campaign, but now it's coming to fruition, and they're using Denmark as a model where there is no federal vaccine schedule. They end up giving, on average, half the vaccines given here, and they have better health outcomes in their children, and no increase in so-called vaccine preventable diseases. Mortality from those diseases, which is always the concern. The vaccine cult tries to make cases into the big thing when cases are irrelevant. Like everybody gets a cold gets a cold now and again, for example. The issue is death from these conditions. And measles, for example, mortality declined 99.48% from its peak around 1915. By 1962, when the year before the vaccine was even available, and 5 years before it was widely distributed, 1968, but it was first released in 63, measles mortality declined 99.5%, even though the number of cases exploded to basically almost every U.S. child in the 50s and 60s got the measles. Almost none of them died, about 400 deaths per year, which is terrible. But out of millions of cases a year, 400 deaths is pretty negligible. In terms of a CFR, case fatality rate, is very small. So measles deaths declined over 99% before the vaccine was available. And what declined when the vaccine was introduced was not mortality, but cases. So it suppressed this 1 week rash, which, from a functional medicine, Chinese medicine, naturopathic perspective, is a good thing for children to just go through a 1 week or a brief rash to detoxify maternal toxins from breast milk and to start to activate the baby's immune function. And we see, that this is not necessarily a bad thing for children to go through these cycles of so-called of illness. And I had chicken pox as a kid, for example, and still have a little scar here. And that's basically what the measles was before the vaccines were available. So anyway, the Denmark has the government is considering, Bobby and the administration is considering mirroring the Denmark model because they have better outcomes with no federal vaccine schedule, shared decision making with doctors, parents get to decide, no mandates, no coercion. As we reported recently, the restoration of religious conscience exemptions, religious exemptions to all vaccines in all states, so that religious freedom is intact. The Supreme Court strongly leaning in that direction with referring the case back down to the appellate court, which had ruled against an Amish family. So this is pretty big stuff. There's a potential, it hasn't been done yet, but there is the possibility that the federal schedule would go away. They may make recommendations, perhaps, but not as something forced upon families by the government. So that would be pretty remarkable. And so this is, I think, a pretty major win. And so that was the big update, and then one of the big updates. And then I wanted to give you the a new web page that just came out recently from HHS, where they, we've been tracking it here to some extent on the show, but there's been a lot, and we've, understandably, there's been so many great things that have happened, and yes, we're still kind of stupefied as to why COVID vaccines are still even on the market and still available, given, just the massive, massive evidence of harm and injury and death and no benefit. But that's a thing. But there's been a lot of good things that have been happening, very much so. So, wanted to. This has been very helpful for me in terms of saving, time and having a summary of these things. I've been piecing it together from different sources, but they have this page. Is the other thing I wanted to share with you today. Year one of the Make America Healthy Again movement, and pretty fabulous updates here. So we have 37 states advancing the MAHA agenda. A lot of that has been related to diet. And the other thing we're scratching our head about, in the health freedom, natural health movement is the geoengineering chemtrails are still happening, except when the government was shut down for that period of time that it was, weeks. I think the chemtrails stopped during that time. So anyway, we have most states adopting aspects of the MAHA agenda related to food, largely. 40% of the food industry pledging to remove synthetic food dyes, FD&C, yellow number, whatever, etc. And so what they did was they put this into 9 categories. So we have the Make Children Healthy Again, lowering prescription drug prices quite a bit. And the order is that drug companies, instead of charging the United States the most for prescription drugs, now must charge the United States the lowest globally available price for prescription drugs. And again, the goal with nature first, drugs last is you don't really need prescription drugs vast majority of the time because they are natural solutions. But for folks who aren't doing those things and making those lifestyle changes, the diet, the exercise, supplementation, herbal medicine, some people do need prescription drugs. They're not bad. They're just overused. So that's pretty huge. Folks like Bernie Sanders have been yelling about that for decades, but really didn't do anything about it. And now it's done. It's happening. Physical fitness. This is returned to the military, which is good. And the other thing has to do with bringing physical fitness programs back into schools. We've got dyes coming out of dairy products, artificial food dyes coming out of dairy products. This is huge. Rejecting the woke nonsense that there are, 78 genders, and acknowledging that there are 2, and also protecting women sports from men. So boys and men out of women's sports, which is common sense, and 79% of the entire population, regardless of political affiliation, is strongly in favor of this. So it's just a very, small kind of minority that still thinks that's a good idea. But this is finally a thing, and this happened pretty quickly early on in the year. But now this is kind of, spreading this concept and acknowledging biological reality, not mental illness. Another great thing, this happened again. This is first administration. This happened again, was withdrawing from the World Health Organization. The United Nations would be next. That would be good. Get out of the United Nations, but this is a good, an amazing, next step. We've got beginnings. This is also in Florida, making moves in this direction to remove fluoride in drinking water, which is amazing. Utah banned it. Other states are considering it. And then they're getting rid of the prior authorization system where people have to wait to get approval for an urgent issue that might need attention. And then getting nutrition education to medical school curriculum and improving the quality of food in schools and in the military. So that's pretty big. So feeding kid better food is huge because that improves behavior, happiness, mental performance, learning, physical performance, everything improves. So school lunches, for example, will be improving, which is good. And then goes on from there. Removing synthetic dyes from our foods, as Bobby pointed out. We had 10,000 food additives. Europe has 400. Why can't we just do what Europe does? Well, that's happening. Mercury, as I said earlier, is coming into getting mercury out of vaccines, starting with the flu shots. Before that, and single dose instead of multi-dose vials. That's helpful because the multi-dose vials, where several people are getting injections from a single vial, was one of the reasons to put mercury as a preservative in those multi-dose vials. So getting mercury out of all vaccines, I think, is the goal. I think they're starting with flu shots. Half of the flu shots had mercury in them. And so that's going to expand up to 100%. They're working on infant formula, what they're calling stork speed, to get better infant formula going. Obviously, breastfeeding is superior, and I think they've acknowledged that, and they're kind of promoting that. And then they're starting with full disclosures in every ad, and the report, kind of the rumor is that Bobby is looking to make good on his campaign promise, which he said if he was elected president, it would be day one, which would be to ban pharmaceutical advertising direct to consumers, as it is for every nation on earth except the United States and New Zealand. And even in New Zealand, there are restrictions that don't exist here. Next, trimming the fat. There's just so many unnecessary redundancies in HHS that they've been, just reducing this unbelievably bloated bureaucracy as part of the overall. I think it's been about 250,000 federal employees, are no longer in the federal government, which is good because the government was just much, much too big, and still is, even with that. I think Vivek Ramaswamy had it right, and when he was on the campaign trail, said we basically need to eliminate 75% of all federal positions, get people back into the private sector. But we're quite a ways from there, but headed in that direction at least. Trimming the bloated federal bureaucracy. Then getting better food through the federal assistance programs, no longer subsidizing junk food in the SNAP program. Then getting safer, getting better science behind ingredients that are added to foods. That's the GRAS standard. And then this is awesome, totally huge, ensuring the taxpayer-funded benefits are for American citizens, not illegal aliens. That's been a huge issue, closing the border and removing illegals from the country so they can, if they want to be here, great, but come in legally. And so American citizens are not paying for benefits to people who are here illegally. I'm a huge fan of legal immigration. That's how my grandparents got here from Italy through Ellis Island in the 1920s. A century ago, they came through Ellis Island from Sicily and from Bari in southern Italy. So I'm a huge fan of legal immigration for people who want to assimilate into American culture, adopt our customs, traditions, language, values. But folks who are just looking for handouts, you know, not looking to contribute anything, you know, don't really belong here. Then this was big as a start anyway, getting the COVID vaccine off of the childhood schedule, which was there starting at 6 months of age, and healthy pregnant women. So that's good. Hopefully the entire schedule of all vaccines will go away. And this is a big one. We talked about this some weeks ago, that the HHS at least reinforced, we've got to put some teeth behind that they must respect state religious and conscience exemptions from vaccine mandates. Now, this was initially states ignoring their own law and persecuting families who were exercising their religious exemption in that state. And that was the Virginia case, I believe, where it's on the state's books that there is a religious exemption, and the state chose to ignore that. So then we've got, this is pretty huge. This is helping farmers, in part, the Rural Health Transformation Program. So this is partly healthcare, and then there's a separate, initiative to support small family farms, which is great. Then this is another thing to make sure that there isn't any forced organ harvesting like they do in China to Falun Gong members, for example. So getting the organ transplant system cleaned up. And then this is huge, banning permanent surgical mutilation of children who suffer from gender dysphoria, which is been known as a mental illness for over a century. Now, we're looking to, now it's starting to happen, protecting children from these, often permanently adverse effects of these hormone treatments and mutilating procedures, surgeries, which are known to cause much more harm and do really no good to affirm a mental illness. As one speaker said, if a 25-year-old thinks they're a different gender, or they were put in the wrong body, they have a mental illness. If an 8-year-old thinks they're born in the wrong body, their mother has a mental illness. And I think there's some truth to that. It's become kind of a boutique, cliquey, social status thing to tell all your friends, your other, woke friends, that your kid is queer or trans or whatever it is. So it's become really a social contagion. And interestingly, in the last year, the number has plummeted to 50% of children identifying so-called in this way. As we've said here before, there is no such thing as transgender. You can't change your gender. It's biological. It's genetic. It's in your chromosomes. That cannot ever be changed, regardless of what hormones and mutilating surgeries you have. You can't possibly change. You can, the term was transvestite, where you can dress up the way you want. That's your choice. But doing this stuff to children specifically is really evil. So this is finally, coming to an end as much as possible. So anyway, so this was another vaccine exemption situation. A Midwestern school, I think it was Indiana, illegally vaccinated a child without the parents' consent. There was a huge lawsuit, and they ignored the filed religious exemption. Hep B is now an individual decision, not recommended before 2 months of age. Then This was COVID and Lyme disease. And what was amazing is Marty Makary, head of the FDA, acknowledged in an interview that Lyme disease was a bioweapon created in a CIA bioweapons laboratory a couple of miles from Lyme, Connecticut, which is remarkable. So Bobby's in that couple of weeks later announced that folks who have Lyme disease will no longer be gaslit to say it's in your head, it's something else. The medical profession is carefully, or has in many cases, we'll just say, told people they were crazy and that's a fake illness, it doesn't exist. Well, it is. And Marty Makary actually admitted that, like COVID, it was a government bioweapon. Then, going into autism, they linked, which is correct, acetaminophen and autism. Again, the problem there is acetaminophen impairing detoxification mechanisms for vaccine toxins. And so that vaccine toxicity can cause autism because of the suppressed detoxification by exhausting glutathione reserves in children that will activate autism or create an autism situation with brain inflammation from the neurotoxins in the vaccine. So that synergy between vaccines and acetaminophen is pretty significant. Then, using AI to look at children's research, children's cancer research. And this was, kind of a controversial one. Bobby suggesting that all women over 40 basically should be taking hormone replacement therapy. I think that was a little sketchy, and he claimed that the adverse effects weren't real or that the research was not strong. I've read that research, and there are significant risks to hormone replacement therapy. So that was one of the kind of weird things. You kind of have to take the good with the bad. Recommending women globally use hormone replacement therapy, for menopause is, a little sketchy. But, certainly there is a difference in adverse event profile from transdermal hormones compared to oral administration hormones or injected. Certainly those are different things. And the transdermals certainly are safer. So we'll see. It's become, kind of making more women think about, oh, maybe I should get some hormone therapy. But these drugs always have risks, like all drugs, and will always disrupt the endocrine system in some way by affecting other glands and through the feedback loops between the hypothalamus and the pituitary and the endocrine system. There's always a downside to introducing exogenous synthetic hormones. It always comes at a price, like all drugs. So, that was a little sketchy, and then the other thing he said, the entire population should have wearable devices. That was a little weird. But, look, these are unfortunate, but, the overall, the number of wins here is just remarkable for food and children and vaccine safety and getting out of the World Health Organization, all of this. That's a process, by the way. It doesn't just happen overnight, but it's certainly underway. So just a lot of good things. A lot of this has to do with food and increasingly having to do with ending the greatest cause of childhood illness of all, by far, not even close, which is the vaccine schedule. And that's something we learned about in the 1970s from Robert Mendelsohn, one of the most famous American pediatricians. Treated 40,000 kids in his career and concluded that the greatest cause of childhood illness are the efforts made to prevent them through mass vaccination. So again, as I've said before, I think there's what Bobby wants to do, and then there's what Bobby is kind of being allowed to do, which are different. and I'm sure he would want to move much faster and do more, thinking COVID shots, chemtrails, and so forth, 5G, things he talked about during the campaign. But these are pretty significant advances. So wanted to just review that with you today. It was really, we've covered most of those things over the last year, bit by bit, but it is good to just do kind of a review of some of the great stuff that's happening. Now, the other thing, so much to keep up with here. I'll give you one of my favorite sources of info to share with you, other than the published research, is Nick Hulsh's page. We've got a question here. Oh yeah, well, I'm sure that there's going to be some of that. Federal bureaucrats being replaced with AI. I'm sure that's a thing. And with AI, it's not going away. And like any tool, it's not necessarily good or necessarily bad. It's how it's used. And how, that's a big question. There's a lot of more questions than answers. So I don't have answers on how exactly what's being used for beneficial or not reasons, but anything that shrinks the government is a good thing. The closer we get to the original vision of a very small, limited government, is a good thing. Remember, the bigger the government, the smaller the citizen. That's a very important principle to remember. The bigger the government, the smaller the citizen. And you have a minority of the country, but that's a significant minority that thinks an ever-expanding government is a good thing as the solution to all problems. And clearly, that's never been successful. That's never turned out well. So the fact that the government overall, and HHS included in that, is shrinking, that's a very, very good thing. Yvonne, any possibility of vaccines no longer being required for healthcare workers? That's a little trickier because it depends on where they work. Is it a hospital system? They kind of have their, as a bit, businesses are allowed to set policy, right? So, as an employer, I can say, okay, you work for me, you have to get this, this, and this vaccine. I theoretically could do that. Employers get to do that, which obviously I wouldn't. But employers do have the ability to set policy. However, businesses, though they have the right to set employee policy, they cannot violate state law. And so if the state law allows for a legal exemption, that's statewide, including businesses in that state. So the short answer is it depends. I think we have 45 states still, thankfully, and I suspect this will expand as that we had that huge victory in Mississippi, beginning the process of restoring religious exemption that was taken away years ago. It used to just be Mississippi and West Virginia had no exemptions to vaccines, and they eliminated their religious exemption. This expanded to kind of socialist states like California and New York, where there are no vaccine exemptions. And they say, oh, well, we have medical exemptions. That's not real, because any doctor, and we've got lots of examples of this, who writes a blanket exemption to all vaccines is going to face, professional discipline and persecution by the medical mafia and their profession and the vaccine cult. So anyway, so the healthcare worker thing is it's just a question. And what I've seen over the years, having treated and taught a lot of nurses, is it comes down to the person's willingness to fight. That, getting bad press onto a hospital system, for example, they don't want that. And so there have been success stories, and we've talked about a few here over the years on the show, of nurses, just as an example, pushing back on these mandates when there is an exemption in place, at least religious, in that state, not being honored by that institution or hospital system or healthcare organization. So, it takes a willingness to fight. Is usually part of the solution, and not just rolling over and saying, oh, it's too much of a hassle, I'll just roll up my sleeve. So that's sort of part of it. So I would hope so. I think the first step in that, Yvonne, because I certainly want that too, is that state law be reasserted in all businesses in that state. So that if you're in one of those 45, 46 states with a religious exemption, and Bobby's been clear, he wants to make sure that's all 50 states, and if the appellate court rules, if that whole religious exemption case with the Amish family goes well, and hopefully it'll go to the Supreme Court, back to the Supreme Court, if the appellate court messes up again, goes back to the Supreme Court, and they could, basically create law, which Supreme Court rulings do, sometimes for the good, sometimes for the worse, but to assert the right of religious exemption in all 50 states, that would override, potentially, states where they eliminated religious exemption. Here in Colorado, they took a step in that direction of eliminating religious exemptions by combining the existing philosophical exemption with the religious exemption to call it a non-medical exemption, and no longer having separate philosophical and religious exemptions. That's a first step to eliminating it, because if the term non-medical exemption raises less opposition than religious exemption, right? If you say we want to remove the religious exemption in Colorado, a lot of folks are not going to be, okay with that. But if you call it a non-medical exemption, oh, okay, it's non-medical, then people forget that is a religious exemption in part. So they didn't eliminate conscious objections or conscious exemptions or philosophical exemptions and religious exemptions. They just combine them into one category, which is very clever as a way to eliminating them entirely. Colorado is, the legislature is trying to replicate California. So Colorado is trying to be California in a lot of different ways. And it's just been a disaster. I mean, the state is really in a downward spiral, understandably. It's very predictable. So anyway, those are some of the things that are going on. A couple of updates from the awesome Nick Hulsher. And here they are. So Nick's just been great. He is the epidemiologist at the McCullough Foundation. He came to my, with Dr. McCullough and John Leake, came to my cardiovascular health seminar in Dallas some time ago, and last year, actually basically a year ago, and it was great meeting him. He's a wonderful guy, young guy. I mean, he's like 28, and he's just on fire. And this is just a quick tour of what he's been talking about. He's gone beyond COVID vaccines to really, all vaccines. And this was the McCullough Foundation report, just proving what we've said here for decades, that the sickest kids are the vaccinated kids, the healthiest kids are the unvaccinated kids. So the McCullough Foundation came out with a analysis. They also did a reanalysis of the Henry Ford study, which came up with even worse outcomes for the vaccinated kids. This was huge. Vaccinated kids sicker across all 22 chronic disease categories. Another massive story was, and we said this here from the early days of COVID, PCR testing was completely bogus, and that the PCR test, it's as a bogus test, were just used to juice or fake the COVID case counts to scare people into wanting the genocide jab, the COVID shots. So that's come out, that the PCR testing, which is never, ever a diagnostic test, and you can find, if you amplify the test and the cycles that you run the test for, you can find anything you want. So it was just an entirely ridiculous, bogus, fake test that was used to fake the COVID case numbers. And then he did, this was a study on vitamin D having benefits. The problem, with vitamin D is when it's given in this massive bolus of 20,000 or 50,000 units a week, once a week, as an injection is a really bad idea. So the best source is sunlight, and supplementation can be helpful, but should be balanced, ideally, as it is in cod liver oil, with vitamin F. So cod liver oil is sort of the best source. Clinically, what I've seen is it's not always sufficient to correct a deficiency, and there's a lot of controversy about like what is a deficiency, what levels are you looking for, things like that. But it is a symptom of lack of sun exposure. So with adequate sun exposure and cod liver oil, which are two things I recommend to every patient, this is very doable. Another big deal, and this was pretty significant, is they're phasing out animal experimentation and using AI to do modeling that would eliminate a lot of the animal testing, which is certainly good if we can reduce some of that. Obviously, animal testing is not a bad thing if it saves human injury or death from a new intervention. However, the technology is such that a lot of that can be done without animal testing. So HHS has really taken major steps to try to really minimize animal testing, which is good. Then mRNA damage. Again, this is a new study on the mRNA vaccines and dysregulating gene expression. So that's an epigenetic effect, and other research proving, because they're finding the spike protein and mRNA itself in cancerous tumors in some patients. So these just been, again, the evidence is just overwhelming. So this is probably the biggest example of what I think, just my opinion, what Bobby wants to do, which is to completely get rid of these death-dealing murder weapons, the mRNA vaccines, and what he's being allowed to do by whoever. There's a lot of speculation about, who might be limiting, what Bobby would like to do. Is it Susie Wiles? Is it? I have no idea. But the amount of evidence is just stronger than strong that these drugs need to be eliminated. And then, there's hundreds of new mRNA vaccines in the pipeline, which would basically be, game over for humanity if widely adopted. So that's another issue. So, that's just going to see how that plays out. But the evidence is just overwhelming. Now we see blood clots in babies who were born to genocide jabbed moms, who was never, these children were not directly injected, but this was, the babies of so-called vaccinated jabbed mothers. So that's a huge, this is just not good. And then he even got into chemotherapy, reactivating dormant cancer. So that was a recent study as well. So he went into chemotherapy. Bill Gates, with the quantum dot technology, he paid MIT to deliver these, permanent implants, delivering vaccines, mRNA, into the body as permanent, skin implants. So this is really messed up. Nick, thankfully, was spending time with Dell on the high wire, which was great. And so it just goes on from there. So those are some of the recent updates from Nick. And this is a good thing. There are 15 states at most, but up to 15 states. And you can see a little map there. Introduced legislation to ban these injections. The most advanced has been in Florida, where they've taken the most action to ban these injections. So, if Bobby is not allowed to take action at a federal level, the states are, at least some states are waking up and looking to ban these injections. So really, really good news with that. Same thing with chemtrails. States are taking action themselves, independent of federal policy, and looking to ban the geoengineering chemtrails as they did in Florida. That is going to expand, I'm quite sure. Keep an eye on Texas, Utah, other sane states that are looking to actually protect people. So that was that. And so I'm just going to check our watch page to see if any questions came in to listeners on our watch page. Okay, looks like not yet. Yeah, if you have any other questions, anything else you want to share with the group, please do. And okay, so that is that. And okay, yeah, on the health, on the natural health side, wanted to, here it is. Yeah, wanted to share with you something about a Chinese herb, which is philodendron bark, which is probably the best source naturally occurring of berberine. So I wanted to do a little bit of that, and then I'm going to play you some Christmas music to close our time in a little bit once we finish that next topic. And as always, really interested in your questions and anything you want to share that you've come across. Okay. Oh, we've got a question here from Richard. Hey, Richard. Great to see you again. And what exactly does soybean lecithin provide in a cardio protocol? Yeah. Well, a number of things. And let me see if I can find a little bit on that for you. But soybean or lecithin in general emulsifies or breaks down large fat molecules into smaller ones. So it breaks down fat. And whenever there is a lipid issue, we're not really concerned about cholesterol, which is irrelevant, LDL also irrelevant, but triglycerides and known plaque. That's where it becomes more of a concern. So anytime there's arterial plaque, which is in part lipid, right? The lipids, the LDL, for example, is protective. All cholesterol, unless it's oxidized, is protective. And let me see if I can find a reference for you. All cholesterol is protective. And let me give you, let's see here. Yeah, this is a triglyceride study. Let me pull this up for you. Okay, so what we've got here is, there it is, okay. This is an older paper, but I'll show it to you. Let me see if I can get a link on that as well. Okay. Here is partly what I'm talking about, which is the ability of soy lecithin to, oh, hey, Amy. The ability of soy lecithin, let me make sure this is showing up on your screen. Yeah, this is an older paper from biochemistry and medical metabolism biology. And what they found, because again, triglycerides are circulating fats. And that's not good because it can clog up the microcirculation. This is what leads to most of the diabetic complications, is impaired microcirculation, which is why all diabetics should have a beamer that they're using in their house twice a day to maintain and optimize and restore their microcirculation. So anyway, this study looked at using soybean lecithin. They lowered total cholesterol and triglycerides. The important one was the triglycerides, and it raised HDL. Good target there is 60, so HDL is important. 60 is a good target. Triglycerides, circulating fats, also important. Should be an upper limit of 100 on a fasting test. And in folks who did have high triglycerides, it reduced them by 36%, which is quite a big deal. And 27% reduction in platelet aggregation. It's pretty big doses. 12 grams is a lot. I really never recommend anything quite that big. But you will also, this is very dose related, so you'll see improvements that'll be equivalent just over a longer period of time with a lower dose. So I don't need to take 12,000 milligrams a day to see benefit. They also tested lower dose of 6, 12, and 18 grams. They found the optimal effects with 12-gram dose, but that was after a month, on a lower dose. And what I recommend is the standard processed soybean lecithin, which is a non-GMO, and it's not the problematic part of the soy, like the protein and the isoflavones. Those are potentially problematic as endocrine disruptors, among other things. This guy is 385 per gel. So at a dose of 6 a day, that's about 2 grams a day in a 6 a day dose. And again, I don't really use it on its own, often in combination with things like beta foods to improve bile flow. But soybean lecithin can be very helpful. This is another paper. Ellen, let me see if I can get you a reference on that first one, a link. Here it is. So here's a link. I'll put this in the chat for you. There it is for that first paper. And then let me get you a link on this paper as well. That we're just going to look at. Again, cholesterol is never the issue, but in this case, okay, let's try that. Okay, here it is, yeah. So there's that, and then here's the second paper we're going to look at here, and okay. So this was, again, an older study, but not that old, 2010, not too bad. Influence of soy lecithin in hypercholesterolemia, which is really not a real thing. There's, with very rare, if any, exceptions, no such thing as elevated cholesterol. The issue is all the other things, like triglycerides, like oxidized LDL, cardiac CRP, homocysteine, fibrinogen. All these other markers are way more significant. Myeloperoxidase, all of that. So this paper was a Brazilian study from 2009 with a much lower dose. This was 500 milligrams 500 milligrams, not to 12,000 milligrams used in the other study. But this was after 1 to 2 months at a very low dose. This is very remarkable. A 40% reduction after a month, 42% after 2 months in total cholesterol, 42% after a month, 56% after 2 months in LDL. Neither of those numbers are really that important. And unfortunately, they measured the two least important things while ignoring the truly important markers of HDL and triglycerides. So, anyway, but just showing, quite a different outcome. And this was a human study that had, a superior result at a lower dose in the same time frame. So that's interesting. But the important stuff is we want to clear excess plaque. Some plaque is there protectively to prevent arterial rupture when there's been vascular damage or endothelial damage. But clearing excess plaque, that's what HDL does, by the way. That's what soybean lecithin does. That's what garlic does. Is very helpful, and that can be a real lifesaver for folks who have occlusive issues, where they are, having impaired circulation, impaired blood flow, because of elevations in triglycerides, for example, is one of many things that might be an issue. So that I thought was pretty cool and significant, and just give you some idea about what can be done naturally. It's quite a bit. So here is the formula that I use all the time, is the soybean lecithin. This is a non-GMO soy. Never use it on its own. I'm always using some healthy fats like cod liver oil, healthy dietary fats, animal fats, pastured, grass-fed beef, organic eggs. But soybean lecithin is really awesome, and I've seen many cases where plaque is dramatically reduced in the arteries using this as part of the protocol. So this is a very useful formula. The link is in the chat. And then the other thing is, always combining, anytime there's a lipid issue, making sure that the bile flow is good, because the bile gets thick, sluggish, particularly in a fatty liver. Beta food is just remarkable for thinning the bile, improving bile flow, improving fat digestion. Is really superb. So there's that. And let's see. Yeah, so that's what it's there for. Elevated triglycerides and arterial plaque is the short of it. And then the best garlic product in the world, easily, is this ethanol extracted, enteric coated. That's the key feature there, is the garlic forte. And I take 1 a day preventatively, and therapeutically typically use 2 a day, occasionally 3. And this is remarkable because the enteric coated garlic will maximize allicin yield, which is, the active compound in garlic isn't in the garlic, it's what it becomes of the garlic in the gut, especially by the action of the microbiome in part. And you want an enteric coated garlic for that reason. Doesn't matter if it's aged as much, that's not that important. By comparison, it's helpful perhaps, but the enteric coating is the main thing. And again, 1 a day is all you need. That's what I take as a preventative dose for cancer, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, arterial plaque. I use this in combination with beta food and soybean lecithin all the time with great success whenever there's a plaque issue. So say an elevated coronary calcium score, diagnosed arterial plaque on a carotid sonogram, or a angiogram or whatever, there's some evidence of plaque in the arteries. That little triad is quite helpful. It's not the only thing, but that's certainly part of the overall approach, for sure. Okay, so there's that. Oh, we got another question here. Let's see. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yep. Oh, thanks for that, Amy. Excellent. Yeah, that's great. Really good news. Jessica Rose is fabulous. And yep, that's great. That is great. Thanks for that link. Difference between Cyruta and Cyruta Plus. Yeah, the main difference is the amount of buckwheat, and the Cyruta Plus is called Plus because it has a little bit more buckwheat in it. The Cyruta has less buckwheat, but has the addition of inositol, which standard process uses rice as the source of the inositol, which is good. And so you'll see here, let me just do a side-by-side for you to explain. This is the Cyruta. Here it is. So this is Cyruta, and we'll look at the label there. And this came out in 1948, which is pretty awesome. And so you have the, so we have the leaf and flower. The aerial parts is the #1 ingredient. Then you have, when they call it buckwheat flour, what that really means, it's the seed or the groat of the buckwheat. That when you say buckwheat or you eat, udon noodles or have buckwheat pancakes or buckwheat flour, it's the seed, it's the groat that is being used. What's cool is that they also include the flowering top and leaf. So that's pretty cool. Then here's the inositol I was telling you about. That's the third ingredient. Then we compare that to Cyruta Plus. And so when do I use Cyruta? When I want the inositol, which is very helpful in cases of blood sugar issues. So when we look at the formula, it's almost identical. And here's the first ingredient, the leaf and flowering top of the buckwheat plant. Then we have the groat, #2. No inositol, which leaves room for more buckwheat. If you notice over here, back to Cyruta, the oat flour is the same, the adrenal cytosol is the same. The difference is there's more adrenal cytosol, which is a cell fluid full of enzymes, and other, everything in the cell fluid. And there's more of that in the Cyruta Plus than oat flour. And in the Cyruta, there's more oat flour than the adrenal cytosol. That's not a spectacular difference, but here the Cyruta, you'll notice the blend is 336 milligrams. Here it's 306, and so there's a slight difference there. But the main difference is the inositol. That's the main difference in the Cyruta, which is good. That's a lipotropic sugar metabolism helping B vitamin, which is good. And here's the links to what we're looking at here if you want to learn more about it or get some. I use these all the time when there's Dr. Lee referred to Cyruta as the anti-stroke vitamin because it helped improve vascular elasticity, vascular health, help to reduce the likelihood of clot by reducing inflammation and improving vascular health, helping to clear excess plaque with the inositol, which again is a lipotropic, like choline, is a lipotropic B vitamin. So a lot of good things there. Yeah. So that's that. Let me just see if there's, yeah, so that's the difference. They both have the seed, they both have the leaf. There's a little bit more buckwheat in the Cyruta Plus, which is why it's called Plus. I think, you could say the Cyruta should be called the Cyruta Plus because it has the plus, which you could think of as inositol as the plus. The other advantage of Cyruta Plus is it has a bigger bottle size. Unfortunately, we're still stuck with the tiny bottles of Cyruta. They only have a 90 tablet bottle. Cyruta Plus has a 360 tab bottle. That's a big miss. It would be really helpful to have the bigger size of the Cyruta. So anyway, that is that. Okay, so all right. Next up, and maybe we'll just do a little bit on this guy. Okay. Yes. Okay. So this was one of many papers on this herb, which is, well, berberine is the compound, but the best source of that berberine is a Chinese herb called huangbai, philodendron bark, which is a wonderful herb. We use it in Chinese medicine for treating what we call damp heat. And there it is. Okay, so there's one. Let me just get the, oh, this wasn't right. This was the animal study. Yes. Right. Yep. Okay, so we'll just do a couple of these, and then we'll wrap for today, unless there are other questions. Love to hear from those. Let me just check our watch page again. If there are questions there, not yet. Okay, so just a couple of studies for you. I'll give you the links on this wonderful herb, which is also a bit timely with the holiday season. Folks indulging a bit and want to make sure their blood sugar is good. But I use this herb for a lot of different things. And let's just look at that for today, and then we'll close with some music. So you've got the links in the Zoom chat. If anybody's on our watch page, just let me know. Just say hello or something so I know you're there, and then I can get links over to there as well. So this was published a few years ago in Journal of Evidence-Based Integrative Medicine on berberine. And this was a literature review, which are great. These systematic reviews or review papers summarize the research on a particular subject, which is great. So they looked at 12 studies, and what did they find? Even though LDL is irrelevant unless it's low, but look at that reduction, and this was, these are human trials, I believe. But look at the result. It was pretty remarkable. 25 to 55 point drop in triglycerides. That's pretty amazing. So that's, kind of up there with the soybean lecithin, if not better. And so that is a good thing. And unlike statins, it won't destroy your mind, your liver, your muscles, your nerves, and give you more heart failure and atherosclerosis. So that was the first paper. The second one was here. Here it is. This is an animal study, and this is a rat study, and same thing. They found a great result in lowering. So if we just this is 4 months of berberine, and it lowered homocysteine, which is a methylation marker in part, and also a risk factor for plaque and clot-related problems like heart attack and stroke. So it lowered homocysteine, it lowered body weight, it lowered total cholesterol, which is irrelevant, LDL ditto, but also had other benefits. Didn't really affect, in this study, the atherosclerotic lesions. The plaque wasn't affected too much. So the headline here was really in homocysteine and, you know, a bit in lipids as well. So the formula that I use, which is superb, and is berberine active, which is not, most berberine products are isolated berberine. It's separated from the plant. And that's a mistake because berberine, like all plant compounds, works synergistically, has this network effect where 1 + 1 = 5. And so this particular formula, and we'll just take a look here. I'll give you the link here. This is the one, and I take this myself just preventatively and also just to optimize sugar metabolism. And even a tablet a day. Oh, okay. Yeah, here it is. So, yeah, it looks like this image is not rendering, but that's okay. We're gonna, the same information is here. And so one tablet gives you a concentrate from almost 9 grams of the huangbai, the philodendron bark, at a 20-to-1 extract. So 440 milligrams at 20-to-1 gives you an 8.8 grams per tablet, delivering per tablet 200 milligrams of berberine, naturally occurring. So my opinion is that 200 milligrams is going to be much more bioactive, physiologically helpful, clinically superior when it's in that context of the whole root, or in this case the bark, than a larger amount of an isolate, where it's just berberine and nothing else, which I think is a huge mistake, and but very common mistake. So this is a full spectrum herbal concentrate, not really it is, you could call it an extract, but it's really a concentrate of the bark. And that's a therapeutic dose. In Chinese medicine, we'll use, you know, anywhere from 6 to 12 grams, maybe 18 grams of this herb in a formula. So you're getting a therapeutic dose even at 1 tablet a day, which is what I take. I tend towards dampness, and this is a great herb for resolving dampness, and does a lot of other good things too in terms of cancer, metabolic syndrome, diabetes, as I said, cancer resistance, liver issues, fatty liver, IBS. And it's just, you know, irritable bowel syndrome, all the inflammatory bowel diseases, gut infection. It's pretty remarkable herb. So this is the preferred way to take berberine, is in this format. And you know, folks who have not seen the links here, you just go to our michaelgaeta.com and you'll see our store page under, you'll see the store page there. So that was the kind of health topic for today. Also great for diarrhea as drying dampness. And you can go up to 4 tablets a day, which will give you, you know, more than 30 grams of herb per day. Usually not necessary to go that high. The Kerry Bone, the formulator, came up with this 4 tablet a day based on the clinical studies on berberine. using up to 900 milligrams or 800 milligrams a day. But I think that's unnecessary because those studies usually are done using the berberine isolate, not the full spectrum plant. So I've never, I mean, not never, but it's unusual that I'll go up to 4 a day. Therapeutically, I'll recommend 2 to 3 a day if there's an issue, like I mentioned. And preventatively, you do get a good preventative dose even at 1 per day. So that's that. And let me just double check, see if, oh yeah, here it is. Yeah, let me just think this was, yes, here it is. Last paper on berberine. And this, yeah, so this will be our last one. And then we'll get to some music to send you off into your Christmas week. Appreciate you being here today for our show. So here is the link. Boom. Oh yeah, certainly you can take berberine and milk thistle together. Somebody asked me at a seminar one time if it was necessary to take them both simultaneously. That's completely false. That's, if you've heard you have to take them together, that's incorrect. Taking them together is wonderful, though. Anywhere from 1 to 3 per day of the berberine active and the milk thistle forte, which is easily by far the greatest, most awesome milk thistle product ever, with an astounding, concentration of milk thistle, full spectrum, not an isolated silymarin, but a full spectrum of the fruit or seed here. And I'll give you a link to this as well. And this is a superb formula to combine, and I frequently do, and with patients. And look at this, 70 to 1. And they just increased the amount per tablet. This used to be 14.6. For many years, this amount per tablet was 14.6. Now it's up to 16.8. That's a lot of herb for 1 tablet. So you're easily at a therapeutic dose at 1 a day. I take personally 1 a day preventatively to protect against environmental toxicity, improve insulin sensitivity, prevent a fatty liver, which both my older brothers had and had their gallbladders out. My dad had a fatty liver. Helping regenerate any liver issues that might be there, improving bile flow and production. This does a lot of good things. This is a very important herb given the amount of environmental pollution that exists, that we're all exposed to all the time in the air, in the water, the food, everything. And for anybody taking a pharmaceutical drug, you want to protect your liver from that drug, take 1 or 2 of these a day. I use 2 or 3, typically 3, as a therapeutic dose if I'm like treating something. But 1 a day is a great preventative dose. Same as the berberine. They work beautifully together, beautifully. Great, both great for blood sugar in different ways, and the liver in different ways. They're very synergistic. So, and that's a great 1 a day. Really great 1 a day. So, last study was this guy, and it's in the chat. And yeah, I was asked this in a seminar. Oh, you have to take them together. No. Well, by the way, the Huang Bai appears in a 2,500-year-old Chinese medicine text, and the Huang Di Neijing. Oh no, was it the Neijing? No. This was the herbal text. And the Divine Husbandman's Herbal Classic. But anyway, there is no milk thistle in Chinese medicine. It's a Western herb. So we've been using philodendron bark for thousands of years, very successfully, without milk thistle, because it doesn't exist in Chinese medicine. So obviously you don't need to take milk thistle with berberine. It's great. I do it all the time, but to say it's necessary, that would be someone who doesn't understand these herbs. If they told you that, they don't really know much about these herbs, I don't think, or their history. Anyway, so here's the, this is pretty amazing results here. So we had decreased insulin resistance. We have a possible direct action on carbohydrate metabolism in the gut, lowers blood sugar, improves insulin sensitivity, as we said. So, that's all a bunch of good things. So just one of, thousands of papers on this particular herb. All right, so there it is, and I think we have done it. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. We are done, and we'll be back next week on the 29th for, again, an abbreviated show, given that we're in the middle of holiday season here. But glad to be with you today. If you'd like to stick around, you can. I'm going to play some Christmas carols for you. And blessings to you and yours for this holiday season. And just a reminder, if you have not recently had a consultation, that's a good thing to do for the new year, is an annual checkup, lab review, protocol, diet and lifestyle suggestion. Just go to our website, michaelgaeta.com, and then under clinic, you'll see patients, and you can schedule a free discovery call if you're not sure if you'd like to become a patient, or if you just have some questions, you can just schedule a 30-minute Q&A, or you can schedule a complete evaluation and lab review and protocol as you wish. But that's a good thing to do for you and yours at least once a year, to make sure you're doing the right tests, the correct interpretation, come up with a personalized protocol. It's just a smart thing to do, or at least have some questions answered, and in a context of a 30-minute call. So that's all at michaelgaeta.com under clinic and then patients. And then courses, we're very excited to have our 11th annual practitioner intensive dates set for late August. And then we have coming up in February, Dustin Strong on sleep, Dr. Lee Merritt going to teach on chlorine dioxide in March. And we've got a great new course schedule coming up for you this year. So thanks, everybody. Blessings to you and yours. A blessed Christmas and holiday season to all of you. So glad you're with us today. All right. Well, here's some Christmas music for you, and we'll see you next week. Oh yeah, and this guy wanted to say hi. He's been so patient, just laying there next to my feet for this whole time, right? Say hi, everybody. There he is. There's Bentley. There's Bentley. Okay. Merry Christmas, everybody. Blessings to you and yours.